Okay, so this week we're answering the question, why can sometimes wine taste completely different when you try it again? Now, there's so many different factors towards this, and we're going to break that down in this episode. Because it is a question that plays a lot of people, and this is why I'm doing this, because I've had discussions about various aspects over the last few weeks. The Vino Geek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
So first and foremost, let's talk about the wine itself. What in the wine, or what's present in the wine that can change? And the big thing, obviously, is the year. So different vintages, and this is something that's come up recently. And our wine of the week is something that I did reviewed one vintage a few months ago, and then I'm reviewing the same wine, but new vintage, a few months later. So you'll see what I'm talking about with the differences and how that is a big factor. And so, yeah, sure, your more commercial sort of supermarket wines, there'll be very little to no change in the style. But if you get a wine that's from a vintage that's been affected by cyclones, say Cyclone Gabrielle, or one that's been affected by a heat wave, or in the case of Europe, with all the fires going on at the moment, that has a massive effect. You know, it's super hot, super dry. So the wines are going to reflect that. The wines reflect the season it's grown in, and that's something we have to be aware of, and especially in a country like New Zealand, where it's such a skinny country, and the weather really plays havoc with how we live our lives and how we change things up. I mean, just a little example, we have gas at home, and it was the first time in about 5-6 years it was cold enough that the gas didn't want to work this morning, so we didn't have any hot water, so that was a bit of fun. But a little bit of deep dive into personal life, but that's by the way. But what I'm saying is that that's been the first time in sort of 6 years that's done that. So the seasons and the growing conditions are a massive factor in what the wine tastes like and how the wine is perceived by us. You know, so that's first and foremost. Next thing is obviously if the winemaker has changed. So you might have had wine from one year and they had a winemaker, but then they left. And so the next wine is made by somebody different. And so their interpretation of the wine is different from the previous winemaker. So the style has changed. You know, these make this is a big thing, like especially with smaller producers or the mid-tier, I would say, that would change their winemaker. We're the smaller guys. It'll be owner operated, so they won't change so much. But that mid-tier, there is almost not a revolving door, but it does change regularly with winemakers, and you change over, and the wines change, the styles change, because they have to.
Just taking a quick pause in the episode to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and come and follow me on socials too.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
Another factor that comes into it is, especially the wine itself, is how old the wine is. So you may have tried a wine, and this is a really good example of something, had a person coming in to discuss a function they've got later in the year, and she had come in a few months ago, tried the Chardonnay we had by the glass, Hope's Grove, the 22 vintage, and she didn't really like it. She thought it wasn't that great. And I said, try it again. It has shifted. I noticed the change. When we first got the 22, I was a little bit unsure because it was such a shift from the 21 vintage. But what I've realized is that the wine was new. It needed time because of a factor called bottle shock, which basically, you think about it in this perspective. If you go to a new job or you move to a new town, you're not yourself. You are in a new environment. You have to open up. You have to become, you have to find your niche. You have to find your fit. And so you're a bit reserved. You're a bit pared back. You don't want to let all of yourself out. You're just trying to feel your way. That's the same with wine. Wine has the same issues. It has to feel its way through and get comfortable in the little bottle. So you think it's come from this big tank or barrel and it's moved to this bottle, small bottle. So it needs time to sort of get comfortable within its environment to show itself properly. And that's what happened with this wine. The wine was closed. It was not really in its element, if you like. And it got comfortable, and now it's showing beautifully. It's showing exactly what it's supposed to be, and it's lovely. Drinking really well right now, and so that's why she now has decided that's the wine she's having for this function, and her and her husband had a glass after they had gone through a few other wines as well. So that's a case in point. The other thing is that, not just bottle shock, but wines mature in age. Think of them as a living thing. I mean, people talk about, I had the analogy of vines. Vine age reflect a human. Same thing, so the vines change over time, and so do wines in the bottle. They change over time too. So, for instance, with the vines, because this is a factor, so I should touch on this, is that young vine wines are youthful and exuberant, but they're up and down. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what they are. So, it's hard, but they still produce this exuberant wine. Then you go through the next phase, which is like the teenage phase, which is totally hormonal. Sometimes it's brilliant and exceptional. Other times it's not so great. Then you move into the adult phase, if you like, and that's when the wines are consistent. They're really good. The fruit that's being produced is consistent and of a high quality all the time. And just over time, obviously it hits its peak, and then a vine age, then it will start dropping and the yields will drop. The wine concentration and the quality of the fruit won't drop, but the yield will, because it can't produce so much. Just like us, as we get older, our output becomes less, but we hope that it's better quality. Same with wines in the bottle. So depending on the variety, wines will continue to get better for a long time. Others, not so much. They might have a short shelf life, so their peak might be after 12 months, and then they start declining. Others, their peak might be 10 years, and then they start declining, or so on and so forth. So obviously, as you try those wines over time, they will change. They will evolve and get better. I just recently had wine that I talked about a few months back. The friend gave me 2 more because they just don't like the style of wine. It's 15 years old now, and from a cooler vintage in Hawke's Bay, but really, really well made. And the wines are mature. They have mature flavors. And the other thing with this, they're under cork, so the 2 bottles were different wines. And that's because the cork quality, and also wines develop at a different rate, whether it's because one was stored in a place that had a bit more light versus, another one way at the back of the cellar or what have you, affected by temperature and light in different ways because they're in different spots. In the cork, it's Russian roulette, how good the cork is. One might have had a 10 out of 10 cork, the other one might have been a 7. And you could taste that. The first bottle was a little bit cooler, a little bit leaner and more acidic. Still had lovely fruit, that dried fruit quality, almost porty-like, but with that freshness, elevated freshness. The second one, less acidity, more plumper, juicier fruit, more youthful fruit, and more tannin, more structure. So it was a meatier, fuller wine. So it was really interesting to see the difference. The first one, the second night, because we like to try our wines over a couple of nights. It's mainly just 2 nights, especially with these older ones. And the second night, the acidity had softened it around, it broadened the palate out, and so it became closer to the second bottle. The second bottle on the second night softened the fruit, softened the tannin. So again, it all but married up again so the 2 wines were the same. But because of whether how it was stored or the cork quality or this and that, the wines were different. So these are factors and that's just the wine itself. That's not including other things that go on that change the outlook of the wine, and that's what we're going to talk about. The next lot of things is sort of external, if you like. It's, the temperature of the wine when you drink it. If it's too cold, it's closed, it's insulated, just like human. If we're cold, we're trying to protect our warmth. And we're a little bit reserved, we're a little bit pared back. Then, if it's too warm, same thing. When we're too warm, we're hot, we're flustered. It's just like, and we're out of balance, and we just feel off, and we're a little bit smelly, perhaps, and we're, same with wine. Wine is the same. When it's hot, it gets sweaty and and you get the flavors you don't want. More alcohol comes out. The fruit isn't as pure, and everything else. Things are just right. They taste better. And so too cold, not right. Too warm, not right as well. So it's finding that balance and getting the best, so that will change what the wine tastes like. So quite often, especially this time of year with the reds, I'd sit on a glass for a while because it'll warm over time and you see the change and the development in the wine and how the temperature affects it. Try to cup it and everything else in my hands so it can warm up and get to the ideal temperature, because then it's better drinking. The next is just whether you've aerated. How much air has the wine got? And this is a twofold factor with how long has the wine been open. As I said, with this 2011 was a Cabernet Merlot, how it shifted the next night and how the flavors meld together and everything else. Same thing, if the wine's been aerated, it will soften the wine. So that's decanting. Whether you have an aerator, that affects the flavor of the wine and the texture and the taste of the wine. So these make a difference. And obviously how long it's been open. Bottles of wine, 3 to 4 days is really, without anything to preserve it, is as long as you'd like to leave a wine. Some wines can go a little bit longer, others not so much. Older wines will fall over within a day or so, 2 days, and this is, it's a factor that you have to bear in mind. And, sure, you might try wine on day 5 and it might be fine to drink, but it doesn't taste like it did on day 1 or day 2 because flavors are all gone, the palate has dropped, and it's just not ideal. But this is what happens to wine. And so this can change what we perceive the wine to be and how good we perceive the wine is because of those things. Glassware, this is an often overlooked factor, is how the glass you're drinking out of changes the wine. I mean, Riedel, the premier glass company, well, one of them, has specific glasses for each variety. Now, they're expensive. They're not cheap, but you do notice a difference. It might not be a massive difference, but it is a difference. And so this affects the way you enjoy the wine. I mean, at Lionel's, we have these lovely wine glasses to drink out of. The wine tastes delicious out of them, really do. But they're very fragile. So they're not really restaurant quality wine glasses, but they're so good to drink out of. So our manager won't want to take them away because the wines just taste so good. And if they taste better, they give you a better experience. You know, you think these wines are better, you enjoy the wines more, you enjoy the place more because everything is really delicious. So it makes a big difference if you're drinking them out of the wrong glass. The next to touch on is we see what you're drinking the wine with. You know, are you drinking it by itself or are you drinking it with food? This makes a big difference to how the wine tastes too. You drink a wine with the right food, they enhance each other. Sometimes you can drink a wine without food and it doesn't taste very good. No, not to your style, but if you have it with the right food, it tastes infinitely better. And this often happens. I mean, I've told this story before. I remember going to Mount Difficulty's single vineyard release tasting several years ago, and my biggest memory, my biggest takeaway from it was I tried a Tasmanian Pinot Noir for the first time. They had it in the lineup because they were showing what wines were similar to each single vineyard to show the differences. And I wasn't super enamored by it. It was just like, okay, yeah, I can get my head around it, but it's not something I'll just drink. Later, they brought all the wines out and they put them out with some charcuterie boards, and I had this Tasmanian Pinot Noir with some charcuterie, and the wine changed totally. It became such a memorable wine because of the because of the pairing. It was with, I can't remember who the producer was, but I remember this Tasmanian Pinot Noir just growing an arm and a leg, and and these things stay with you. And so that's the thing, what you eat, really makes a difference. Whether it's too spicy, whether it's not spicy, everything else, they all make a difference with how the wine interacts with the palate. Because sometimes wines can clash with food really badly, and you think the wine is bad because you like that food, but it's not the wine; it's the combination. The other thing is mood. When we drink a wine, that can have an enormous factor on how we enjoy the wine. Because if you're in an environment that you're not liking, or you're in a bad mood because of situational things, the wine doesn't taste as good as if you were in a good mood and you're enjoying the wine and you're enjoying the company you're with and everything else. That changes how you perceive the wine, how you see the wine, how you enjoy the wine. So that's a massive factor when you're drinking wine, is that the wine needs to taste good. You need to be in a good frame of mind for the wine to taste good. So you need to understand that that's a big thing. You need to be in the right space for the wine to taste good. It doesn't just mean that, sure, you could have certain wines for certain moods. Sometimes, you might just like that comforting Aussie Shiraz that you've just brought from the supermarket, what have you, when you're not feeling that great, But then when you are feeling great, you don't really like that Shiraz. You want a fresh, zippy, zesty sort of Riesling or something, because that's where you're at. And so that makes a difference. Your mood is a big thing, and how you drink it and who you drink it with and what you're drinking it with is a big thing as well. So yeah, it's a whole lot of information, a whole lot of different things to take on board, but there's a lot of factors that go into whether the wine tastes different at the time you're drinking it from, a year, 2 years, or just a few months. All of these factors come into how you perceive the wine at the time you're drinking it versus the previous time or what have you. Sometimes you can think, oh, I thought I really liked that wine, but I don't really like that wine. But it's your mood, or it's what you're eating it with, or the friends you're with, the environment you're in. All has a factor on whether you're going to enjoy that wine at that time. So yeah, it's amazing what can change and what can affect the way you perceive and drink the wines.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
Now for the wine of the week. So, as I said, a few months ago, I had the East Hope Chardonnay 2024. Loved it. Just absolutely delicious. Really, really good Chardonnay. But then tried the 25, and you can taste that they are the same wine, but you can also taste that they aren't the same wine. There's differences between the two wines. There's, you can taste the difference in the vintage. How amazing it is that 12 months of growing, between the two vintages, how much it's changed the wine, because they haven't done anything really different in the winemaking. It's all about the fruit. So that's a really massive thing. So we're going to break that down. So I should have had the notes ready. I just had to pause that to get the notes. As I said, I did try this, a little while back, a couple of weeks ago. So this Chardonnay, the big thing between the two is the power difference between the two. Beautiful Chardonnays, but there's a more powerful core to the 25. So the color, pale yellow, slightly light in color. So which deceiving. The nose is a ripe citrus, there's a grilled sort of peach sort of note, and then there's mineral sort of saline character to it as well, which is really interesting. The oak component is very, very minimalistic, just like the 24. Wasn't too overt, it was there, you notice it, but it's more a textural element. On the palate, it was much fuller than the 24. Rich and powerful and very Moorish. The phenolics or the tannin was much more developed. It was riper, and that created presence and weight in the palate. There was still this mineral note to it. There was still pure fruit purity, like the fruit wasn't ripe, but it was full. Because of the structure given to it by the vintage change, where the 24 was quite elegant and delicate on the palate, beautiful but delicate. So these two factors meet, and they are different. That makes the wines different, but equally as beautiful and brilliant. This is more an elevated traditional style, so classic Hawke's Bay style, but just elevated to another level. And that's the big thing. Last week, I talked about the Smith & Chef Howell Chardonnay 2024. This is all but on par. This is just behind it. It is a beautiful wine and a really lovely style. Different style again, and complex in a different way. Different vineyards, so you get that different characteristic in the vineyards. As far as the score goes, it's hard to not give this a 97 out of 100 as well. Slightly below the Howell. It's not quite the Howell, but very, very close. Just different style. That's really how I can define these two wines. So same score, different Chardonnay. Really cool. Love the wine, and I look forward to selling it over summer in the restaurant. So come and check us out over summer and try the wine. That's all we have for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you sort of get an idea of why sometimes wines taste different at different times because of this. So until next time, thank you as always for joining us. Sante, bora. Bye.